Good morning. Welcome to the Monoxivent webinar series. My name is Ian Frank. I'm a Vice President at Monoxivent. Today's presentation will focus on Monoxivent's hose products. Our presenter is Erik Swanson. Erik is the Division Manager at Monoxivent. He's been with the company since 2000. He's nationally known throughout the industry. He provides a lot of frontline support for our sales representatives and end users, and we're fortunate to have him. And we just want to go over a little bit of housekeeping for you today. In the lower left corner of your screen, we are encouraging participants to text questions to us. We'll then read back the questions and answers throughout the presentation in an effort to encourage dialogue throughout. Monoxivent's hose products include a wide range for just about any vehicle exhaust or dust or fume application. We even have a high temperature hose in excess of 2,000 degrees. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into our presentation and turn things over to Erik.
Thanks, Ian. Like Ian said, today we're going to talk about hoses. Don't feel shy about asking questions as we go. It's probably best to have the questions as we are addressing things so that we can answer your questions specifically as to the hose type that we're talking about, so that all of our viewers can hear the answer to that. When it comes to hoses, we obviously have a wide variety of hoses available to us, anywhere from the metal hoses, which are the 1 and 2,000 series hoses, 3,000 series, which is all rubber. 4,000 is a very common hose we use for high temperature applications, and the 5,000 is medium temperature applications. Not only that, but welding and light dust and particulate. 6,000 is a welding type hose, and the 7,000 series is just that, is a series of hose, and what really designates that is the construction. It is a clipped product, and as we get further into the slides, you'll see how that hose is constructed and why it's unique from the other ones. Starting with the metal hoses, the 1,000 and 2,000 series hoses, those are floppy interlock metal, obviously, galvanized steel, or 300 series stainless steel is available with those. You can see from the data sheet, it is all metal. It's an interlocking crimp. You got to use the term flexible lightly when it comes to metal hoses because it does not bend real easily. It's not like a fabric hose. You know, back in the good old days when we did not have hose reels or other ways to pull this hose up, metal hose was fine. And even back then, the technology didn't exist to utilize some of the fabrics that are available today. Metal hose works great in an underfloor outlet, let's say, because it slides in and out of that underfloor outlet very easily. However, it's something you don't want to use too often underfloor because once you run it over, it's done. You got to buy a new piece of hose. Another thing with metal hose, sometimes we see it specified in welding applications. Probably not the best idea because as the weld spatter gets down into the interlocking helix of the hose, it can obviously bind itself to the metal and locks everything up, so it doesn't want to flex real easily. The 3,000 series hose, we call it a no-crush hose. And this particular product is, as you can see, the heavy convolutions in the hose is what helps it hold its shape. There's no metal helix involved in this hose at all. So with that said, you can't wrap it around the drum of a hose reel. You don't want to get it too hot because just the heat will soften the rubber and it can collapse on itself. This product we see used extensively in the underfloor outlet vehicle exhaust market. Because it is all rubber, you can drive over it, step on it, whatever, and it's not going to collapse the hose necessarily, that it won't spring back into shape. One of the things about this no-crush hose that you want to be aware of is because of the heavy convolutions in the shape of it, it's a fairly high pressure drop product. For example, vehicle exhaust, when we do 300 CFM through a 4-inch diameter hose, you can see that the pressure drop for that is 0.38 inches per foot. So a 10-foot piece of that can be up to almost 4 inches just for the hose alone, disregarding the rest of the system. Here you can see that hose in action. You can see how it slides in the floor outlet in the lower right hand. You can see in the upper picture there with the Mini Coopers how it comes out of the floor outlet and attaches to the vehicle. It is, again, it's great for this type of an application because it is on the floor all the time. It is getting drug around. Again, just be aware that the pressure drop's kind of high, and we really want to keep the hose short if we're using this extensively. The 4000 series hose is one of our staples. We use this a lot in higher temperature vehicle exhaust applications. Diesel trucks, John Deere dealerships, Caterpillar, those type of applications are where we see this hose commonly used. It is rated for 600 degrees. That particular rating is how the manufacturer rates this hose, and it is basically a baking test. You're taking some of that fabric or a piece of the hose and putting it in an oven, and it's getting cooked, and that's the outside of it, and not only the outside but the inside as well. You'll see some other ratings on that chart. 1,000 degrees, it's been tested for 1,000 degrees at 72 hours, and that's an internal temperature. No airflow, strictly heat on the inside. The 1250 intermittent temperature, we have done some in-house testing with this particular product, and we've had it up to 1,300 degrees plus for 6 to 8 hours. So it can take some heat, and it's not going to fail, let's say. It's very smooth on the inside, so the pressure drop is not extremely high on this product. This particular product, because of the way that it is made, it's made on a mandrel. They basically take the strips of fabric and rubber and build it on a buck, if you will. And once that's done, they take that and put it into an oven, an autoclave, and basically cook it all together. Once that's done, you have a finished hose just like it is. This hose is available 3-inch through up to 12-inch diameter maximum. We can't go beyond 12-inch. They just don't have the mandrels to make it that big. Here we can see the 4000 hose in action. As you can see, this is on a hose reel. Because the 4000 series hose does not have an external wear strip on it, you really do not want to drag this hose around on the floor or over workbenches or over the vehicles or what have you, because it will wear through the outer skin. Silicone is not an extremely robust material from an abrasion standpoint, so we want to try to keep this up off the floor if at all possible. And again, in this case, it's with hose reels, but we've used this plenty of times in balancer type drops or rope and pulleys, that type of thing. The 5000 series hose is a medium temperature hose up to 550 degrees intermittent. This particular product is run through a machine, kind of like spiral pipes. Strips of fabric are run through the machine. It's glued together over a metal helix, and in this case, it has a wear strip bonded to the outside of it. Typically, this hose is rated by the manufacturer for 350 degrees, and that is, again, like I talked before, in a baking test, meaning the interior and exterior are both getting cooked, no airflow. 550 degrees is an intermittent temperature interior. This particular product is great for vehicle exhaust when it comes to like car dealerships or motorcycle dealerships, anything that's where the vehicles might be just idling, occasionally revved up, or not generating a real high exhaust gas temperature. This can also be used in welding applications. It is good for that because it is UL 94 VO rated. What that means is that it will not support combustion. If sparks hit it from a welding application, let's say, it may burn a hole in it, but it will not support combustion. It won't burst into flames, let's say. This can also be used in real light dust applications if we're trying to move some sanding dust, for example, or light powders. This hose can be used for that as well. Here we can see the 5000 series hose in a balancer situation. This is in Lexus dealership, again, where they're just servicing cars, simple idling conditions, occasionally revving them up, not generating a whole lot of temperature. The 6000 series hose is really for welding. Again, it's another one of those UL94VO products that will not support combustion if sparks hit it. Again, is it possible to burn holes in it? Yes, it is, but it will not support combustion. This is a fairly lightweight hose. We use this primarily on our welding arms. Because it is light and it's very flexible, it works great in that application, so that you do not have to worry about weighing an arm down. This particular hose does not have a wear strip on it, so you cannot drag it around on a workbench, for example. You want to keep it up off the floor, up off workbenches.
Eric, we do have a question that came in on the 6000 hose. Is this available for corrosive applications?
This particular hose I would not suggest for corrosive applications. It just is not made for that type of an application. The materials of construction just aren't there for that. Again, how robust the hose is, and it is fairly light. The material is fairly thin. I'm afraid in an application like that, it wouldn't last very long. We do have some other hoses that we will talk about here in a minute that are made for corrosive or chemical type applications. Here's the 6000 series hose on a welding arm. That particular arm is internally supported, meaning the skeleton that holds it up is inside the hose. So the hose is draped over that structure, and that's what helps hold it shape. And again, in a welding application like this, it's suited for that perfectly. The 7000 series, like I said in the beginning, is really designated by the way that it's made. It is strips of fabric run through a machine with an outer clenching material, metal, that holds it all together. This hose is not glued in any way. It's strictly pinched together by the metal helix. That metal helix not only holds the hose together, but it also provides abrasion resistance. You can drag this around, and it's not going to pull the hose apart. You definitely do not want to hook that on anything, because if you pull it too hard, you could tear the hose, but that clinch, that mechanical clinch, is really tight. This particular hose is available in a wide variety of temperature ranges. We can go from 350 degrees all the way up to 2000 degrees. This particular hose is also available in a Teflon version, which would be good for the chemical applications. In this case, this particular data sheet, you can see how the mechanical clinch holds the fabrics together, and in this case, with a 350 degree temperature rating, it's just a single layer of fabric. As we move up the range temperature-wise with this product, the fabrics obviously change, but that change helps us increase the temperature resistance. This particular product, the 570 product, has available an external plastic helix cover. This particular product we see used a lot in vehicle exhaust applications, where it might be coming from a hose reel or a balancer type drop where the hose is hanging freely out in the space. That plastic helix cover helps protect against scratching vehicles, for example. If it rubs up against the paint of a car, that plastic helps protect it so that if we just left the raw metal, it could potentially scratch, obviously. The plastic cover, though, does limit the temperature. We don't want to put a plastic cover on a 2000 degree hose, for example, because the plastic cover will just melt right off. 7850, again, similar construction as everything else, still single plies of fabric, but it is a different fabric altogether to get us additional temperature. 7100, as you can see now, when we move into 1000 degrees and up, we're going to get into multiple layers of fabric when we're talking about these hoses. This particular product has 2 layers of fabric now. They are different, but those 2 layers help get the temperature where we need it to get 1000 degrees. Now with this particular product, the 1000 degree product, it is not a good product. Even though it can handle high temperature, it's not a good product to use for diesel type applications. The outside of it, especially if you get it real hot, can get brittle, and if you flex it a lot, it can, it's not going to tear the hose open, but it will degrade the fabric, if you will. 7120 is a product that we really see a lot of, especially when we get into military type applications. and some of the ag implement or industrial equipment type John Deere or Caterpillar, those type of people, they are running the engines a little harder. They might be doing hydraulic testing or something like that. Not quite full-blown dyno testing, but they are running the engines harder, developing higher exhaust gas temperatures. And this particular product, we see, we use this quite a bit. Hose reels, balancer drops, that type of thing. 7150, again, we keep getting higher and higher with the temperature range here. Again, 2 layers of fabric, still clinched. If we get into a situation where we know we're going to have exhaust gas temperatures that are getting high, the 7150 is a good step to move into without getting terribly expensive, which is what we're going to see when we get into the 2000 degree hose. This particular hose, we've moved into 3 layers of fabric. The innermost layer is a fine stainless steel mesh, so it can take not only the heat, but it can take some abrasion resistance as well, especially when you get into some of these high output diesel engines. You're going to see a lot of black soot coming out of it. Well, that soot is very abrasive, and in this case with that stainless steel inner liner, that helps the abrasion. It's not going to wear the fabric out like it would with strictly a true fabric type hose like some of the lesser temperatures. Obviously, when you get into a product like that, especially the 2000 series, it's extremely expensive, and we got to make sure we're using the right thing in the right place. Something that we can do to help overcome some of that cost is we have available combo hoses. We can take various temperature ranges and mix them together. We can take a 2000 degree hose and use that, say, for the first 10 feet of straight off the tailpipe, and then graduate into maybe a 1200 degree hose after that. That way we get the temperature resistance we need right off the tailpipe where it's extremely hot, and assuming that we have the system sized properly with the proper airflow for the application, as the air travels down the hose, it's obviously going to cool off, so we can transfer into a cooler, lesser temperature hose, and that not only helps the cost, but we don't have to worry about the hose further on down the line because it is being cooled off by ambient air coming into the system. Here you can see some of the 7000 series hose. This happens to be a 1200 degree hose at Fort Lee. These were big XL hose reels, and we had hose in there that ranged from 10-inch diameter all the way up to 18-inch diameter, depending on which bay they were servicing. But this is an excellent depiction of how this particular hose gets used and how these hose reels can support it. When we get into chemical type hoses, there's a lot of them that are the clipped product like the 7000 series. They are available in Teflon, Viton, Hypalon. We just need to know what the actual chemical is that we're working with so that we can apply the proper hose. Typically, 99.9% of the time, the Teflon hose is going to have you covered for most chemical applications. It is, however, not the cheapest when it comes to cost, but if we want to make sure that we're covered, the Teflon hose is really the way to go. But we do have a wide variety of different hoses available for chemical or toxic or corrosive type applications. Again, when it comes to this type of a hose, we really need to know what it is that we're working with, what the chemical is or the toxic element is, so that we can make sure we give you the right fabric or the right hose for the application. Dust collectors, we can do some dust collection hose. The 5000 series hose that we saw before can be used for the real light dust and particulate that you might see in a sanding application, for example. If we get into an application where they might be doing larger pieces of wood, for example, or metal grinding, or something that's extremely abrasive, powders like food type, we can do food grade for some of the chemical type hoses if it's a food application. If we're into material handling, we have various thicknesses of material that we can do depending on the abrasive nature of the product that we're collecting. When it comes time to figure out exactly what we need hose-wise, there are obviously things that we need to know. You know, we don't want to have somebody call us and just say, hey, I need a piece of hose, because that's not going to tell us anything. It's like going to your car dealer and walking in and say, I want to buy a car. That pretty much describes everything on the lot. We want to know specifically what we're using this hose for. Is it vehicle exhaust? Is it a chemical application? Is it a dust or abrasive application? We need to know those things. We need to know the diameter that's required, and we also need to know the length of hose that's required. And something else that will help us a lot too is the CFM, if we know what CFM is going through it. Obviously, if it's a replacement hose, someone in the field would have to give us that information. If we're designing the system, we develop that information. But CFM, velocity through the hose, how robust the hose is all going to add up to selecting the right product for the application. We have these sheets available that will help you fill in the blanks for us so that we know what's going on. In this particular case, this particular design worksheet is really geared towards vehicle exhaust, but nevertheless, it helps you get the information you need. How are they running the engines? How big are the engines? What is the exhaust gas temperature? That kind of thing. All that helps us to determine what hose to use, what's going to be appropriate. That's not to say some of those blanks aren't appropriate for, say, a dust collection application or a chemical application. The questions are still there. We just need that pertinent information to get you the right hose. Exhaust requirements. Obviously, this will help us determine generically what an engine is pumping out air-wise. An engine is nothing more than an air pump. If we know the size of it, the cubic inches, the speed that it's running, the RPM, and the exhaust gas temperature, which the exhaust gas temperature is the indication of the load that the engine is under, we can use those parameters to figure out exactly how much that air that engine is pumping out. Once we know that, we can size the diameter of the hose and the rest of the system. If this is a pretty specific application, a certain size engine, kind of doing the same thing over and over again, we do have this exhaust calculation sheet that will help us determine exactly how much a given engine is pumping out air-wise. Again, we need to know cubic inches, RPM, and exhaust gas temperature, and with those numbers we can plug it into that formula, and it's going to tell us how much air that particular engine is pumping out. We do have general guidelines that we use based on CFM and what kind of vehicles we're working on, but 3-inch diameter hose is typically about 150 CFM, 4 inches 300 on down the line, 8 inches 1200, 10 is 2000, 12 inches 3000. These are general guidelines that you're going to want to use for vehicle exhaust or any light dust or particulate. That's not to say we can't alter those CFMs, but in some cases, especially as the hose gets larger, we need to be concerned about the velocity of the air going through the duct. As some of these hoses get larger in diameter, and it's typically 10 to 12 inches and up, we got to be careful with the velocity, because what will happen is it will cause the hose to collapse. It will suck it up like a slinky. If you took a slinky and stretched it out, that's the hose nice and stretched, but if you run a whole bunch of velocity through it, it's going to want to collapse that slinky down, and it can, in some cases, totally block off the airflow. So we got to be careful in some instances how much air we're actually running through the hose. When it comes to hose length, if we don't know exactly how long the piece of hose needs to be, obviously we can use triangulation. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I think we all slept through those in high school math, but nevertheless, here we can put it to practical use. If we know how far it is from where the hose is starting down to the floor, the vertical drop, and the horizontal run, the B dimension, we can calculate C. And that'll get us in the ballpark, obviously. I mean, there's things that can change if the vehicles move around or if the process moves. We need to be able to have a little extra to allow for that, but at least this will get us in the ballpark if we can use some triangulation to get us the length we need for C. Obviously, all of those tools are available on our website. We have areas, resource area where you can go in and grab those data sheets. Those resources are there. for all of you to use, and we encourage you to use them. And with some of this stuff, especially when we're getting into specialty hoses, it's probably best to call with all your information so we can go through the application and make sure we get you the right hose.
Okay, thanks, Eric. That concludes today's webinar on hose products. Please contact our support team for design assistance, quoting, or any other requests. Remember, our website, monoxivent.com, is home to a complete catalog and various other resources. This webinar and all previous webinars are on the Monoxivent YouTube channel. These presentations are linked off of our website. Click the Resources tab Eric mentioned and click Webinars. Webinars are held the last Friday of each month. In April, our topic will center on Monoxivent's FRP products. And we realize all of you have very busy schedules, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to spend with us. And thank you.